Well, folks, Kenny Pickett is not leaving Pittsburgh. He is staying in Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to talk about this fit. We're going to talk about what this could mean for the Pitt program. We're going to talk about it all here today on the Locked On Pitt podcast. I'm not sure anyone expected this to happen, but it did happen, and we're going to break it all down here. It's coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Pitt podcast.
Are Locked On Pitt, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into the Locked On Pitt podcast, everybody. As always, I am your host, Nick Faribaugh. And today, we have a lot to talk about. Kenny Pickett, indeed, folks. Though, if you are watching this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. If you are listening to this, make sure to leave a review and do all those great things. And folks, Kenny Pickett, it's official. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. Did anyone expect this? Kenny Pickett is a Pittsburgh Steeler. I'm not sure if I actually thought this would end up happening, folks. And I'm being very real on that. You know, great player in terms of what he can do. Kenny is a consummate professional, and he's a guy that is undeniably fun to watch. But there's also the fact that there's definitely things to be concerned about with his game. He's not a perfect player by any means. And most certainly, I think you can be somewhat concerned about what he brings to the table. And by that, I mean, obviously very polished, accurate, decisive, is able to read the field very well. His progressions, his ability to go through progressions has improved drastically. And his accuracy on the deep ball has improved drastically. So there's a lot of things working in his favor, if you will. So Kenny Pickett has things working for him. The issue is there's that kind of capped upside, right? We talked about this. You know, he's going to be a starter. The question is going to be how good of a starter is he going to be? And so that's the thing. The team willing to bite the bullet was looking for stability, and that's what they were going for. They're going to get a decent quarterback. They're going to get a guy that can start. They're going to get a guy that can do some things. But more importantly, what's his ceiling and, what's his floor? His floor is probably something like Teddy Bridgewater, something around there. And then you have his ceiling, which is something like a Derek Carr type. That's kind of how I feel about it. Now, the Steelers are an interesting fit specifically because I think, Matt Canada recruited him. I think he does a lot of things that are very similar to what Matt Canada looks for. I really do. I think this is a good fit for Kenny in the way that, one, he doesn't necessarily have to go right away, balls to the wall, start right away, and make sure he is 100% ready to go. Now, he can do that if he truly is ready, and he could be. He's a very pro-ready quarterback. He's ready to go in there. So he's going to get that opportunity to compete, but he doesn't have to be sprung right in there. We know he's a tireless worker. We know Kenny Pickett's going to be a guy that's going to get after it and get after it and get after it and get after it. That's the type of thing he's going to do. So working against Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, it's not going to scare him. I know that for sure. It's 100% not going to scare Kenny Pickett. But what they do here in this Matt Canada offense, in the true blue form of the Matt Canada offense, makes sense here. You get a lot of crossers. You get a lot of intermediate to short concepts, which is where Kenny Pickett lives in the middle of the field. So the middle of the field is going to be wide open. You're going to be able to use some rollouts, which is what he's comfortable with. You're going to be able to kind of build this entire system around Kenny Pickett's improvisation as well. So he's a fun player, right? It's not that Kenny Pickett can't be good. In fact, by quarterback standards, he's good. The different issue is Kenny Pickett is just, I don't know if he's ever going to be the franchise guy. And there's only like 10 or 11 of those guys in the NFL. So it's really not a crazy slight to say that. Again, he could be in that kind of top range we're talking about where we say, okay, he is anywhere from Kirk Cousins to Derek Carr-ish, somewhere in there, which isn't terrible. I mean, in fact, that's probably the 20th overall pick. If that's what he ends up being, it's not a terrible pick. But the question is, are you going to pay those guys $40 million? And that's going to be where things get kind of sticky, I think, in 4 to 5 years. And that would be kind of the whole thing with any team. It just kind of didn't matter for Kenny Pickett. Wherever he goes, that's the type of player he was. And so, this is fun in a lot of ways. It's that storybook type of thing where, Kenny Pickett gets recruited to Pitt, plays here for 5 years, has a lot of great games at Heinz Field, leads Pitt to an ACC championship, and now he officially goes to Pittsburgh. And so you come full circle. Everything comes full circle. Simply that. It is a storybook type of ending. The guy fights tooth and nail to start his first year at Pitt. Doesn't quite get in there, but gets in there late in the year. Proves himself, becomes a 4-year starting quarterback for this team. Puts the team on his back. Grows the program. Makes it what it is. Works next to the Pittsburgh Steelers all day, every day for 5 years. And eventually, the Steelers don't even have to leave their backyard to get the next quarterback that they draft, which is really something. I will say that. It's a crazy thing. I think you have to get some deja vu to when they drafted James Conner, right? I mean that's the comp here. Is okay, the draft for James Conner was crazy too, but that was storybookish. And now this one is kind of the same way. Are you telling me the next quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers is really going to be a Pitt guy? Yeah, it is. And we're going to see what Pickett does. Again, I think this fit for him is actually good. I actually think it is a good fit. I think Kenny's going to be able to work on some things here. So I think in a lot of ways, it's a good fit. And that's why I think the Steelers were willing to take the risk. They get their next franchise guy at 20. It's great for them. You spend barely anything. It's a swing at the park, and you can try and kind of recoup what you have, right? The 20th overall pick without giving up anything. You didn't trade up. You didn't do anything. All you really did was take the quarterback and swing at one. So if he becomes really good, and again, even if he becomes Derek Carr, like that's not necessarily terrible. If he becomes Derek Carr, Kenny Pickett might be worth this pick, but that's going to be his ceiling. And that's going to be something he's going to have to reach. So we'll see. I think that is especially going to be very important to kind of figure out if he's going to end up being like Derek Carr. I think he's going to have to work on his pocket presence a little bit. I think he's going to have to work out kind of those issues. I think he's going to have to work out a little bit of footwork issues in order to reach that ceiling. But this is an environment in which he can do it. He's got some nice weapons: Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth. So I think it's not a bad fit for him. And again, I think the offensive philosophy kind of lines up with him too. And they wanted a mobile quarterback. They're going to be able to get one. Kenny's a creator first, and that's what he is. He's kind of weird. He's not the normal type of guy that you would think for a 5-year tenured guy. He's a creator. He's an improviser. He's a special, different type of these guys. And so that's why I think you look at, say, a Tony Romo or a Derek Carr more than, say, a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Kirk Cousins. That's kind of what I feel you look at with him. And if that's what he ends up being, good. At the middle part, he ends up being Teddy Bridgewater, which would be a bit disappointing, I would imagine. But this is a good fit for him to potentially reach that ceiling. I think the Steelers are one of his better fits. I prefer New Orleans as his best fit. I think that was his best fit. But the second, I think you can argue the second best fit is Pittsburgh. So I do like where he landed here. However, I think this is going to be huge for Pat Narduzzi and what he can do for recruiting too. So I do want to talk about that. But I also want to talk a little bit more about Kenny in this fit, and we'll talk about that. But first, let me let you know about Built Bar because, folks, summer is coming, and with summer, you need some food to get going. Built Bar are perfect for the snack to take with you on family vacations. If you go to the beach, whatever, you can pack them in your kid's backpack. The best part about Built Bars is they're healthy and delicious. You don't have to worry about a protein bar tasting bad while you're trying to get the health benefits, because all Built Bars and Built Bar Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate, but you get all the health benefits you could ever want. It's low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, high in protein. You have everything you could ever want with a ton of different flavors, from raspberry, banana cream pie, double chocolate, and so many more. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. The promo code is LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast, as we are continuing to talk through Kenny Pickett to the Pittsburgh Steelers and why I think this is a nice fit for Kenny. The Steelers, there's a lot of thoughts you can have about the Steelers doing this. But I think, moreover, I think for Kenny, he won out here, man. I keep saying it. This is a real storybook type of ending for him. This is kind of a living dream. You saw how emotional he was, right? You saw how emotional he was. Kenny Pickett just had the tears flowing, and you had to feel good about it. Pittsburgh was buzzing. That's for sure. Pittsburgh was definitely buzzing. And so Pickett, I think, has an opportunity to, one, start here. I think he has kind of a good value. There's a good value for that slot, which he was picked at the very least, and the fact that I'm not sure he was going to be here and he was projected to be there. Um, you know, I think you maybe lean towards Willis a little bit if you're betting on upside. If you're betting on the safe pick, Pickett is the answer. And I think this is a nice fit for him. Now, he's actually ran a more pro-ready type of offense in college than he did in the NFL now, because Matt Canada runs a college type of offense, which is going to be a little interesting. But the shotgun principles are all going to be there. Going to have to work a little bit more on under center. Not that he didn't work under center, but they do run a lot of under center stuff in Canada's scheme. But working over the middle of the field, that's going to be his bread and butter. I think he's going to be a wonderful fit. And this is where I really think he's going to thrive. Just a beautiful fit with Deontay Johnson. I think that's a great fit for him. I love that fit for him. I think that he's going to be a guy that this offense, if they open up the type of windows they can, he's going to be able to really attack that. I don't think he's going to attack a ton outside the numbers, on those wide 9 routes or whatever it might be. That's never really been his strength. But when he works inside the numbers and inside the pro hashes, he's really deadly, and he's able to not just place the ball well, he's able to place the ball well enough to where you get consistent yak out of your guys. So, honestly, when you kind of look at what you get in Kenny Pickett, you get a dude who is legitimately a pro-ready player, can start day one if he earns it, and he's going to bring in a certain hometown flavor that you get. And this is really dope in that way, because it's a feel-good story. He's got to feel great about it. He's got to get right to work, though, and he can't think about it for too long, right? Going right across the play, he's going right across the duplex, essentially, on the south side of UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. He might be living in a nicer place than Shadyside. I will say that, if that's where he lived. South Oakland, he might have an adjustment from that too, with some of the salary increases he will be getting here at the NFL level. But I think that Kenny is walking into here, and this is essentially the type of stuff that Pitt players, Pitt coaches, they all kind of dream of. The Pittsburgh Steelers to Pitt pipeline. Like, that is not a thing really outside of the UDFA process. They do bring in a lot of UDFAs from Pitt. But James Conner has been one of the only Pitt players picked by the Steelers. And they've shared that facility so much where you felt like it almost should happen more. Right? These guys they can walk on the balcony and go watch practice. They can essentially watch practice whenever they want to watch practice. That's the thing. Is that this is a ending where you have talked to the coaches. Matt Canada's talked to Mark Whipple. Kenny Pickett knows Mike Tomlin. They all know each other already. And so I can't tell you how many times he said excited in the press conference tonight. It really was pretty special stuff. And so, there's so much diversity in the type of stuff that he's going to experience in this offense too. He's the type of player that they look for in that mobile type of scheme. I think he's going to fit Matt Canada's scheme kind of nicely here. So I like the fit. I get the logic behind the pick. For Kenny, I think it's really good. Again, I think this is a good environment for him to reach that peak potential. The Steelers, we'll see. I think Kenny, though, could be in a position where if he doesn't, say, reach that top echelon, we could be talking about him trying to move on. And that's always been something that I thought Kenny could potentially become. Again, moxie, great leader. He's always going to have desirable traits. He's got good athleticism, can throw off different platforms. That's always going to be very desirable. But he could be a guy that maybe moves around a little bit before he finds a permanent home. Now, Pittsburgh could be that permanent home if he reaches that ceiling. The question about it is, how confident are you in him reaching that ceiling? And then what is going to constitute success for him? He's in a tough AFC. It's not going to be easy to win in a division with Deshaun Watson, with Lamar Jackson, with Joe Burrow. Yes, not easy. It's straight up just not easy. But you can see that there's a buzz about the town right now. And you can also see that Kenny Pickett is very excited about it. And I think those are two things. When you have two sides that are very excited about something in this hometown city, I think Kenny Pickett, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, man. He's got to be able to handle that pressure. But I know with his leadership skills, I know with his moxie, if there's a guy that can handle that, it's going to be him. And so, if you're a Steelers fan tuning into this about this pick, I would tell you this watching Kenny Pickett for 5 years. This is going to be a guy that's going to fight for his teammates. It's going to be a guy that has moxie. He's got leadership. He's tough as hell. He's going to do all these different things for you. He's going to be accurate, decisive. He's poised. He's got a lot of good traits, man. He does have good traits. He'll have drawbacks. The arm strength isn't great. The pocket management can get a little annoying at times. The hand size isn't really much of an issue. And Kevin Colbert said as much. Kenny Pickett is not the flashy pick. Kenny Pickett is the Met pick for you guys probably out there. The safe pick. And a lot of you will say, well, scared money don't make money. And I get that. I think Malik Willis's upside is a lot of fun to think about. But I think the Steelers wanted that safe guy. And they didn't have to look any further than Kenny Pickett. He is the safest quarterback in this class. You know what you're getting in Kenny. Straight up. You know what you're getting in Kenny. He is that dude that you see on tape, which is fun to a degree because what you're going to see is what you get. And he's got advanced skills in multiple areas. And I think he's going to hover around that range where, that Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr range. And Pickett's a complex first-round pick, man. He really is. He's a frustrating player at times because you wish you had just a little more. But I think that he's a guy that is going to start, but you wish you just had a little bit more of maybe a guy you can win with, but not because you're not just winning because of him. I think that's the type of quarterback he is. But a good fit for him to reach his ceiling and maybe be a guy you can win some games because of. And I think Derek Carr is kind of on that boundary where, yeah, you win some games because of him, but you kind of lose some games because of him. So maybe Kenny Pickett can become one of those. And I think that's his best case scenario. And I think he's got the athleticism to maybe reach that. So we'll see if he does, but I like this environment for him overall. Now I want to take a little bit more of a Pitt-centric kind of twist to this. We talked about Kenny overall. Fit with the Steelers, it's solid fit. But what about Pat Narduzzi now? What does he have to sell now that Kenny Pickett became the quarterback of the Steelers? I'll talk about it. But first, let me let you know about BetOnline because BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continuing source for all your sporting wagering information from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast as we are taking a bit more of a Pitt-centric twist here in this third segment. And I do want to talk about this because here's the thing that I have to kind of look at when I think of what Pickett to the Steelers is going to do. Again, you sell all the time to recruits. Yeah, we work with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's like, cool, I get to know Mike Tomlin. I get to know all these guys. I can talk to them anytime, which is fantastic. But a lot of guys are like, I'm not going to be picked by them. They don't pick guys like that. But let's be real here. Let's be real here. And I think we have to be very realistic. This is a huge, huge boon for Pat Narduzzi. Your star quarterback that was just a Heisman finalist just got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you know how happy Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt coaching staff have to be right now? Not only do we work with the Steelers, oh yeah, we are able to show that they invest in our players too. That's the crazy thing about it. It's a huge recruiting tool. Now you could say 2 of my players, James Conner and Kenny Pickett, ended up on the Steelers. They're here watching you. You could be playing in Heinz Field on Sundays for that team in the black and gold. That's huge. The NFL connection Pitt has is such a rare one. No other team shares a duplex every day, day in, day out, with the pro football team. It's always been the boon for the Steelers. It's always been a boon for Pitt. Both teams benefit from this. And Pitt is going to really help themselves, I think, on the recruiting trail here. It's a huge, huge selling tool. They cultivate in you. They're able to really just draft you. I mean, it's crazy. It is a great recruiting pitch, though. And I'm legitimately kind of impressed with how he's going to be able to use this, because I thought of so many different ways you can use this to the guys. You can use this in so many different ways on the recruiting trail. And Narduzzi's going to be able to really blossom that for quarterbacks, for receivers, for whatever position you play. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't just live here. They pay attention to you. They communicate with you. They are hands-on. You don't think there are some bump-ins in that duplex right there? Where, the Steelers just magically bump in to one of the Pitt players and they just talk to them. I think the Steelers haven't talked to Jordan Addison a little bit, put some feelers out. Just saying. Think Jordan Addison could be next, and I think it's possible. I think, though, that the Steelers connection is very fruitful, and on-campus stadiums would be lovely. But getting that facility down there in the South Side, and then being able to also play in a professional football stadium, it's really a special experience. It seriously is a special experience for these guys. And that is something that's incredibly special. And for Pat Narduzzi and the staff, he's got this special inkling that he can sell to the whole wide world of recruiting. It's just another pitch. When you look at Pitt's boosting NIL deals with what Chris Bickle's doing, okay, great. Now you have NIL power to match. And we talked about that. That evens the playing field, right? The playing field's even. Now we can sell our facilities, our campus, our success on field, our coaching, our scheme. We can sell all these things. This is going to be a very interesting thing to sell as they continue to go up in kind of these recruiting measurements and the stars. A guy like Hakeem Williams, for example, is going to be a really interesting kind of study, I think, because they're getting him on campus. He loved it enough. And if you think that, the Steelers being there isn't a little bit of a boon for other guys, yeah, no, it definitely does. It 100% does. Pat Narduzzi is 100% going to use this on the trail, and he should. He should be excited about it. He should be excited that his guys are getting paid attention to by the Steelers, and the Steelers are really considering them like that. And that is really what I think it comes down to. is that when I look at it overall, I see Pat Narduzzi being able to not just sell it on the recruiting trail, to sell it to guys that are trying to transfer, but to really build a culture around it too. Part of that culture, that NFL pro culture, you feel like it's a pro culture already. It's a college culture while we are still surrounded by the pro culture. You can kind of learn what goes on a little bit. There's so many learning opportunities through it. There is so much that Pat Narduzzi can do off that. And I think that's what's going to make it really fun and special. And overall, I think that's what's going to really pop everything. It's going to make everything pop a little bit on the recruiting trail. And this is a big boon for Pat Narduzzi and his staff on the recruiting trail. And congratulations to Kenny Pickett. This is big time, man. I mean, being able to kind of live that dream he's talked about, stay home, if you will, in his second home and stay in Pittsburgh. That is a special thing. I think for him to continue to play at Heinz Field, he's got to feel good about him. And I think he's got to feel great about it. It's a feel good story. Again, I think there are some downsides to Kenny Pickett's innate game. We've talked about that though. He's a solid player. He's a starting quarterback. The Steelers got that, and they wanted to say Pickett. They got it, and so this seems like a nice match for them. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Kenny Pickett is able to do here in Pittsburgh. So I am very excited, and I'm also excited to see how it translates onto the recruiting trail for Pat Narduzzi with the whole new pitch that, hey, we get drafted by them now. I think it's a nice recruiting pitch for Pat Narduzzi to say, hey, look, guy just went in the first round of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't think they won't take you. All right, folks, as always, thanks for listening to the Locked On Pitt podcast. We will talk Kenny Pickett even more. We'll also make sure to talk a little bit more about Damari Mathis. Could he go tomorrow? We'll see. But there are a ton of Pitt players on day 3 that can go as well. We'll talk about all those guys. It's coming up on the Locked On Pitt podcast tomorrow. You'll hear it, folks. As always, thanks for listening. And as always, hail to Pitt.